good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. I am Kacy Fleming, your host at the Fuchsia tent. I am so grateful and excited to be joined for the Joy of Movement with my dear friend, Nicola Schergeismar. And I am a terrible mover. As you've all seen from my video online, which was really Elaine from Seinfeld. I'm hoping people will get that reference. We're all perimenopausal, so I think most people have seen Seinfeld. But just want to talk a little bit about how I met Nicola, and then I'm going to pass it over to her to tell us a little bit more about herself, because I always like people to give their own bios. There's always nuggets that I don't know, that you don't know, that we want to know. So it was March. I had gone to South by Southwest, and I had just started really researching the concept for the Fuchsia tent and figuring out what it was going to be and what we were going to do here. I had the name, I had kind of the idea, I knew my mission, but I didn't know how I was going to deliver that. And I was staying in a house full of amazing women, none of whom were coming with me to this menopause party, because if you've ever been to South by Southwest, and if you haven't, you know, there's like 9 million different things always happening at the same time, and you're pulled in constant directions. So for me, this was why I was in South by Southwest, and I was going to this event in this tiny cafe, come hell or high water. And I went not knowing a soul. And I stood next to this human that radiated the best energy, the most joyous, excited, I don't know, authentic, unique, beautiful energy. And I struck up a conversation because, like I said, I was the dork by herself, and heard her beautiful accent and asked where she was from. And she told me she was from the UK. And just like every moron does, when somebody says they're from a place you're aware, I said to her, oh my God, do you know this person, Rebecca Brown? I've been dying to like meet her and see her products and talk to her. And she was like, yeah. And she's here in South by Southwest. And so Nicola and I spent that brief stint of the evening together, and then stayed in touch. And she invited me to meet Rebecca. And since then, we've had this glorious relationship. So it is an honor and a privilege to have you with us in the Fuchsia tent. And can you please tell us about yourself in your own words, kind of how you got to do what you do and what you love about it and what makes you tick?
Sure. Hello. Firstly, no one cannot move. You are not a terrible mover. I just want to emphasize that. You have body, you have movement, you can dance because you have body, and you will have your own moves. And that's really the baseline that I like to lead from when it comes to the Free Your Spine method and the experiences that I lead. So hello, my full name is Nicola Schergeismar, and I am a perimenopausal human, as well as a solopreneur, as well as a movement person who adores everything about movement. And I created the Free Your Spine method back in about 10 years ago, so a little decade ago. And the Free Your Spine method, in its essence, at its core, it embraces the spirit of individuality and expression, and it fuses together creative back health movements, mixing in many moments of what I call freestyle or intuitive movement. And I really, really stress the importance of people moving their spines, led by myself, but in a way that feels good. And that's really where this sense of intuition comes into play. Now, people can be quite disconnected from their bodies, and I really, really get that. And that's why, part of the experience is very much, it's structured, and then we break out into this freestyle element of moving like you want to move, moving, shaking things the way that your body wants to shake, freeing up what parts of your body want to be free. And this is really informed from my early days in the dance world. So I've been into dance since not close to when I came out of my mama's womb, but close to it. So from about 13 years old, I was really, really into dance. I really got into specifically the world of street dance, and more specifically, I really, really hooked onto hip hop culture. And this is important because at its essence, hip hop culture is all about improvisation. It's all about celebrating who you are and championing the individual. And this is really a common theme that carries throughout the Free Your Spine method experience, which I think makes it quite different and quite unique to other modalities that are out there. So I was dancing, I was loving it, I was bashing my body about, I was being quite careless, if I'm being brutally honest, doing all these crazy moves with my body, not really thinking about my spine, not looking after my back care, because hey, I'm 20 and I think I've got age on my side. However, I ended up with many, many injuries, and that actually got me into researching a technique called Pilates, which I'm sure many of you have heard of. And I wanted to really address these imbalances that I'd created basically from being quite ruthless with my body and not very loving on it, if I'm being honest. So I started practicing Pilates for about 5 to 6 years. And then I saw great change in my own body, ironing out these imbalances. I also have this kind of wonky spine going on, which is quite popular in many humans, called scoliosis. It's essentially a lateral curve of your spine. So I wanted to get more aligned, and Pilates was amazing for that. Although I had a really uninspired teacher at dance college and I wasn't inspired by her until then, I went off, did my own little research and found 2 really, really amazing mentors who I went to classes with for many years. And then I went and did my training, got my Pilates training, and this is a whistle stop tour. It's kind of 25 years of bio here. I got my Pilates training, and then after teaching that for about 5 to 6 years, I noticed what I observed, some spaces in that modality for basically a little bit of room for difference. And that specifically was about more movement for the spine, more movement in a rotational plane, in a circular way, 3-dimensional movements, and breaking out of also this quite regimented modality where, for the most part, people have an understanding that Pilates can be a bit boring sometimes, or you're on your back a lot of the time. And I really wanted to fuse in my dance and my free-form expression of like encouraging people to move in a way that felt really, really nurturing and nourishing for them. And that really infused the way that the Free Your Spine method got essentially created.
Amazing.
And yeah, I've been going to South by Southwest, which is where I met the fabulous Kacy. We were there 2022, 2023, shaking things up. And I'm on a mission. Free Your Spine, yes, it helped me resolve my own back issues. That's how it came about. And now I'm really on a mission to help, especially women in their middle years, so between the ages of 38 to 55, nourish their back health. Also really passionate about elevating mental well-being, and that's where this concept of play and individual self-expression comes in, and getting really, really free and trigger happy and joyful, as this conversation is all about the joy of movement. That's a big piece of it. And if I may say so myself, I love the Free Your Spine method.
You may say so. You should
I
say
may
so.
take up space. That's something
That's
that's
right.
been my journey of taking up space. Yeah, and I want to share it, and I'm very grateful to share it with you and the Fuchsia Tank community. So thank you.
Amazing. So let me ask you this question, because you bring up a great point, right? Which is, many of us are not, you said this kind of early, not in touch with our bodies any longer, right? We go through these periods of time. Many of us are office or desk sitters, myself included. We become quite sedentary, and then we take bursts of going for walks or doing exercise or that sort of thing, but we're not constantly moving in a fluid way. With that said, we also have a lot of emotions locked in our body. We may feel silly moving our bodies in certain ways. I can imagine, and I'm going to ask this question now, some of the women that have come to you over the years have been like myself, maybe a little less comfortable in their own body, moving their own bodies and that sort of thing. And that when you do freestyle, maybe that might be intimidating at first, right? To kind of move in a way that is not structured. So, how do you help women kind of come out of their shells when they don't feel comfortable moving their body? Like, what are some of the things that you do to get them going?
Yeah, I completely get that. It can be intimidating. And that's the last thing that I want people to feel. So I really set the scene for about the first, let's say it's an hour long experience, for about a good 40, 45 minutes. I'm setting the scene for building up people's listening skills within the movements that I'm very much guiding. So the movements in the first at least 3/4 of an hour of the experience are very guided and are very structured. But then within the structure of the series of these different spinal based movements, I offer and I invite moments to think about or to actually implement where people are able to put their own spin on things. For example, I invite people to go at a rhythm that feels really juicy for their back. So choose their pace, as it were. So it's not dictated and determined from this authoritarian style of teaching, which is something I found teaching Pilates is very like bish bash bosh. It's ABC, do it like this. And I wanted to also liberate my own way of facilitating and guiding people to be more like on their own rhythm and on their own time. And so rhythm and pace, offering up options to go at a pace that works for people within the guided segment, and then also start to create their own personal inquiry, as it were, and be their own movement detective, which pretty much was what I did for many years to help resolve my own back issues, to go with a quality of movement that feels really good. So that might be leaving something out, that might be doing more of one particular movement, and start to really nurture this dialogue of intuition, because I think also we are quite muted down to our intuition, and there's so much noise outside and also up here in the brain space that we can't hear the body's communication and the conversation that our body wants to have with us, because actually the information lives in our bodies, not up here.
Yeah, and this is amazing, and apparently, not apparently, for sure, when you're going through menopause, the body's sending a lot of signals. It's sending a lot of signals that you're not used to getting. It's sending a lot of trauma, a lot of pain for people. It's stiff in places that it didn't used to be. Um, Obviously, there are days when you don't feel like moving because you haven't slept much, or you're hot, and sweating is like maybe the least appealing thing that you can think to do. So talk a little bit about your own perimenopause journey and how you've used movement and for your spine to kind of help you through some of the more problematic symptoms you've experienced.
Yes, so in hindsight is a beautiful teacher.
Sure is.
I, I would have, if I'd known this at the time, but again, that's where hindsight comes in. I was in perimenopause the year I turned 40, like, and the moment my periods had 5, 6 months of irregularities, that was my perimenopause stage 1. I mean, who would have known there are different stages to peri as well? Like, God. So I started getting irregular periods shy of just turning 40. I have been moving throughout my whole life. My movement practice has changed quite a lot, really, to meet, if dare I say, the demands that the emotions do place on our, not just our musculoskeletal health, but also just physically and physiologically. So, my practice, part of the mantra that I really encourage other people to also take on as theirs, is move little, move often. So my practice is very much circulated around this move little, move often. And what that actually practically looks like is, regardless of what is going on, because we get hit with such a cacophony and barrage of emotions and crazy feel like, literally, as we know, we feel like we're going insane and crazy. I literally start my day with 2 minutes of freeing cat cow. A lot of the free spine movements are based around the cat cow, which a lot of people know from yoga, when you're on all fours and you arch and you flex your spine. But I do it from bed. I do it on the edge of my bed, or I do it sat in bed, and I just start moving my spine in all the glory of her direction. So drawing spinal circles around and doing some twists. And I often will, with Free Your Spine, we really pair the movement with music. So music is a big inspirational tool, as it were, that we get into the movement with. So moving little and often, and really upping the ante, as we say in the UK. I don't know if you say it out in the US, really
Gotcha.
doubling down. As yeah, I think that's a bit more common. Doubling down on also strength training. So my background in Pilates, I also teach and work with people one-to-one on the Reformer Pilates machine, which isn't always, accessible to everyone. But there's many different ways that you can strengthen your spine. And that's where the Pilates technique can come, really, really has great placement and purpose. But not just Pilates and not just the Free Your Spine method, but also really imbuing this notion of emotions are energy in motion. So if we start to reframe our emotions, some of them which are really, really quite catastrophic, in terms of the rage and the anxiety and the irritability, all of which I've had and continue to have. And actually, I've been meeting these emotions with very organic movements that we all know. So things like just to channel the anger, like punching space, like literally as if I'm in my own boxing class. I don't have the boxing gloves on, and I'm just punching through space, as good as punching a pillow, let's say, because we really want to let those emotions move through and out of us so that we don't let it sit and store in our body, because we know what we depress, what we push down, what we numb down, essentially over time, unfortunately, it does present physically. So meeting your emotions and being really compassionate with it. And this is where my practice has massively changed, because I've had to bypass the mind, as it were, and really get more into the body. And it's become a lot more of a mixed modality practice, honoring the yin with the yang. So the soft, the sensual, the feminine, the receptive side of moving and going slow and steadily and sensually. And then also getting more into the yang, more active, more masculine. So I do a practice with people called stomp and shake, where you're just literally stomping and grounding your feet down onto the earth, your floor, as you are shaking. Shaking shakes up your lymphatic system. So actually the Free Your Spine method has expanded beyond. Initially it started to help people's back health, and back health can be very problematic in perimenopause, because of the flux of estrogen and the impact that has on ligaments and musculoskeletal health system. But I also think there is, and I've said this to you before, Kacy, I don't think there's enough people talking about mental well-being and the impact of women's emotional and mental well-being during peri. The statistics for that age group between 45 to 55 of women, very, very sadly, unfortunately, taking their lives, it's no, like, we need to be. So it was very uncomfortable for me, myself, as someone that's also struggled with mental health for a very long time, and struggled even more once peri hit when I turned 40. Like, I have to start talking about it, because there are not many people who are actually talking about that side of things. There's a lot of emphasis on strength training, movement, but it's very broad strokes. It's very generic, and it's very much more nuanced, as we know, with our symptoms and the number of symptoms we get hit with emotionally and psychologically. So for me, like, I'm side by side with women that I work with. I'm going through often similar symptoms. The anxiety, depression comes and goes, and letting the movement practice meet where you're at, and trying to lift out of the head and drop into the body. And there's a number of different ways we can do that. Sometimes it's calmer, sometimes it's literally like rah, going in hard.
I love the discussion of the mental symptoms or the feelings that we have manifesting in the body. My background, obviously, being a former head of well-being and spending a lot of years in well-being, we talk so much about burnout. We talk so much about employee mental health, right? And a lot of it is bottled up emotion, is frustration, is stress. And also in the perimenopause world, menopause world, the same sort of thing starts to happen, so much so that sometimes when you're in it, you don't know whether it is a work situation causing the emotional chaos, whether it is a personal situation causing it, whether it's hormones. But what I love about what you say is that movement is a way out, right? And I think we forget that so often, like that inclination to lock down and stop moving and stop breathing and hold it all in is so ingrained in us as people because it just, right, is not societally appropriate to, like, throw a tantrum and shake. But if you ever watch babies or animals when they've been in conflict or have experienced these really difficult emotions, they immediately shake off their body to like move it through. And we as humans are just like, nope, gonna do it. I can't breathe, right? It's like that really crazy thing in us when we probably need to be moving the most, we move the least. And so what I love hearing you talk about is the practicality of movement. And I will be sharing this and keeping this with me forever. Move little, move often,
Mm.
right? Because that is so important and can completely transform how your day is going. And as something as an entrepreneur myself, that I've started forcing myself to do when I get in my head about something that's happening for business. Even before we got on this call, I was like, all right, pick a song you like and dance. Like just get up and move your body. Nobody can see you. Thank goodness. You're welcome. You're all welcome that you can't see me because it is special. All right. But just love that you bring that aspect to it because I do think there's so much shame also in the perimenopause, menopause time about weight gain, especially in the belly, spine pain, hip pain, joint pain. And we don't feel often sensual at all. Like we feel like we're disappearing. And this way of even just moving, even if it's silly to take up space, to move the spine, to move the hips is so great. And I think it's going to provide a lot of peace for people who are looking to do these giant workout routines or huge strength training or lose all this weight and self-abuse. It's like, no, move little and move often, right? Like that's such a great tip. You also do something I love that I want to ask you about just for a second, which is called an awe walk.
Mhm.
I'm sure you say it much more beautifully with your beautiful accent, but awe is a very difficult word for those of us from the Northeast to say. It sounds like ah or oh or awe. I mean, W-E, just so we're clear, a walk of awe or a walk of wonder, right? Which I can say a little better. Tell me about this practice. How did you start doing it and what does it look like for you?
Yeah, so since about 2020, since what hit, I was going on daily walks like a lot of the world and really soaking up just being in nature and having very little sounds around me. And the all walk came about because I find that we have a lot of these self development, personal building practices that we feel sometimes, for me anyway, can get to the place of feeling very tick boxy, like, have I done my gratitude? Tick! But actually, it's not really feeling like it's making that much of a difference or actually stepping into the so-called embodiment of it. So the all walk came about because it was essentially an expansion on this concept of gratitude. So taking also the opportunity to lift my head, lift our heads, which are the weight of a bowling ball, they're heavy, right? Lift it from looking down on my phone, as often I would go on my walks looking down at my phone, and lifting it up and looking around and taking in the most rudimentary things that we often take for granted. I mean, it sounds really silly, but how often do we walk past trees and actually look at a tree and be in awe of the fact that we have things that grow from the ground that look like trees in the form that they are, with the bark and the greenery. And so it really came from this wanting to feel grateful, but in a way that felt really honest and really sincere. When I was doing gratitude, writing it down, it didn't really feel like I was feeling it in my body. So this way of going on a walk and looking at what's around us, or even being in awe of the fact that our bodies are able to take us on a walk right now for 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and being grateful. So for me, it's an extension of a gratitude practice, being in awe. And I think there's a lot of science around what being in awe does to your psychological, emotional, mental well-being, and it feels really good. So it's part of everyday joy, as it were. It's become part of my everyday joy, going on an awe walk.
I love it. It's like, and I'll butcher this as well. I'm just going to say forest bathing because I believe the Japanese term is Shinrin-yoku, but I'm sure I said that horribly wrong. So I'm going to go with forest bathing, which is that beautiful ancient practice of like going into a wooded area and standing against a tree and feeling your back against it and just not talking and not listening to music and not doing anything but looking at everything around you. And I had the honor to practice it last year when I was away at a retreat, and literally like it became something that I now want to do every day. But what I do also hear so much from you is this check the box well-being, right? Like, did I journal today? Did I move today? Did I eat right today? Did I meditate? Did I do a gratitude practice? And it becomes performative for ourselves, right? We get stuck in this rhythm of feeling like less than, not just as women about everything else in our lives, but now like our well-being practice becomes something that we can self-punish about, right? Like, oh, I didn't work out hard enough, or I didn't do this. But move little, move often is something we can all do, regardless of if it's in a chair, moving your body, if it's in the bed, as you suggest, when you get up and just kind of moving your spine backwards and forwards and that sort of thing. And I love this approach. I think it's so much more approachable for human beings than most of the approaches I hear. So
Yeah, it's
go,
making movement humanistic. So
yeah,
you can be brilliant at yoga and touch your toes and go and have done ashtanga since you were 30, but actually, how are you applying that in your everyday life? And are your hamstrings any looser, or have you got something else that's seized up instead? So really pairing your everyday movements and activities, like when you're rubbing your moisturizing cream, like doing a little slinky spinal wave with it, like pairing your everyday, like rudimentary, you do it anyway, brush your teeth movements with a hip circle. Do you know what I mean?
I hope you all right now are seeing the difference between my spine and Nicola's spine as a reason you want to come see her and not talk to me about movement. Because as I even try to do that, it looks like, this weird, like gyrating thing going on. And I was a yoga teacher. I always feel like when I do it, like, and there Kate's going, I feel like my head looks like it's not attached to my body. And I'm like, clearly my neck needs some work because it does not move with the rest of me. And I look like a bobblehead. And it's funny, my partner is the same way. Like he does this cute little dance when nobody's looking, but like you could see that the head like is not attached to the neck or the spine and you look like a bobblehead. Anyway, I digress. All right. Let's talk about joy. Since that's what we're here to talk about. I feel like we have, but I want like to understand from you, what do you think of when you hear the word joy? Like what are the associations that come to you when you hear this word?
Joy is the antidote to feeling low and feeling sad or feeling depressed for me. So it's the twin sister or twin brother of play. Play is a big part of the Free Your Spine method, and finding your joy comes from being playful. So when I think of joy, I think of anything that lifts and lights me up. And that could be making a funny face. And that could be, the best thing to do, although your mind will tell you different, when you're feeling really goddamn low, is just break out into a nonsense laugh. Just laugh for no reason. Your physiology will change and you will feel better. It's these little things that the brain will try to convince us not to do, but actually can be transformative. So joy is anything that makes me feel alive, anything that elevates, that lifts me up. And yes, my go-to is always movement. Although I have got a bit more diverse in the last couple of years. I remember I started to really embrace this notion of joy when I joined a gospel choir a couple of years ago, and using your voice. So your voice and vocal projection tapped into this big nerve called the vagus nerve, which is connected to people who may be holding a lot of trauma. So actually exercising your vocal cords, unblocking your throat chakra, as they say in a lot of yoga, will have amazing benefits. So I found singing has really, really tapped into a chapter of joy that I never knew I could access. I do think joy is quite difficult to tap into when your nervous system is a bit all over the place, when you have come from historical, generational, or physical, or any other type of trauma. So that is something to bear in mind and something I'm very mindful too. It's similar to what you were saying about people feeling like they don't have the confidence, or they feel very inhibited in their bodies to free movement, as it were. So really creating that safe threshold for people to access their joy. And, it's not something that off the bat that people can tap into. So I just wanted to mention that.
See, so these are the little nuggets. Remember, y'all, when I said at the beginning, we were going to ask Nicola to introduce herself because the nuggets come out. This gospel choir nugget is a new nugget for me. And I love nothing more than uncovering like nuggets in people. People are like a blooming onion to me. Like that's a very American term, but most people know what the blooming onion is. It's this gross thing at Outback that many people probably love, but also makes me nauseous when I think about it. That is like fried in all the layers, and like the human is in that center. And I love to like peel all the little layers of the human to find out all the awesome things about people that we don't know. And that is really an important comment, because as somebody who also sang, that was previous life of mine, career, it stirs up something in you vocally when you move. And when you are in actor teacher training, an actor, they have you move your body to release sound from your voice so that you can learn to project, and you can learn to move vocally throughout your body and feel sounds in different places. So I love that you brought that into this conversation, because I think people don't think about that much, but there's nothing better than being filled with rage and like screaming journeys don't stop believing, like at the top of your lungs in the car where
Yes.
no one can hear you. Like, I mean, you gotta belt something out sometimes, people. Like, okay, so what is your go-to music dance style? People want to know that. And we also want to know, if we were going to ask you to sing a karaoke song, what would you sing?
Oh my God. I'm going to have to think on that one. What is my go-to dance style, first of all?
If you have a favorite, just not just like your favorite kind of music or favorite kind of dance.
Well, right now I've been really getting into burlesque because it really opens up my sensual, feminine, slinky physicality and way of moving. So I'm really getting into burlesque dancing.
I love the videos. I watch you dance on there when you post them, and I'm like, who is this person? And can that ever happen for this body? Because I don't think so. Like, I can't even, I see the undulation. I'm like, that is so sexy, but I'm just going to watch it.
But the thing why I think burlesque has really drawn me in, and you may well surprise yourself if you take yourself off to a class, Kacy, is that it's very inclusive, it's very diverse, it's all colors, all shades, all types of body sizes, all many different genders. It's really, really fluid, and that's what I like about burlesque.
Okay,
So
you sold me. I'm gonna try it. I know I should be doing it. It's just very intimidating. And I'm like, why would anyone want to see this old body? But it may make me, I'm sure my partner will appreciate burlesque lessons. TMI. Okay. Karaoke song of choice. What would it be?
Well, the music genre that I've been really feeling into of late is Afro house. It just gets me stomping and grooving and shaking. A karaoke song would be, I think I was a big Madonna fan, and I think something like a prayer
Oh
or
yeah,
holiday, or I love the 70s soul era, Aretha Franklin. That titles myth me right now.
you're good.
Um,
I've learned with the brain fog that comes from perimenopause, and I just learned this last week on a podcast, when whatever song or person or quote is won't come to you, you just shut your mouth, because usually what you're going to say is wrong and you may offend somebody. So I've learned that with brain fog, now when I'm like, nope, I'm just going to say I like this artist and I'm going to leave the songs alone because I cannot remember, or nope, I love this quote, but I'm not going to even attempt at who said it because I'm going to say it wrong. So good on you. All right. That is really it for my formal questions. I have one more at the end, but I want to open it up. I know we have two people and I don't want to put you on the spot. So if y'all don't have questions, you don't have to ask them. But if you do have questions for Nicola, I don't want to hog her. So I'll pause for 1 second. If anyone wants to ask a question, you can come off mute or type it in the chat. And if not, I will ask you my final question.
Hi, I'm Kate. I guess my main question is I think it all sounds amazing what you're doing. Like I would love to do that. I feel like I have a block in like making myself do it. So I guess my question to you is when do you fit it into your day? Like you're dancing, like what is your like do you make that your first priority?
Yeah, I tend to fit in movement within the first window of my day, as in like pretty much as close to waking up. Because then at least if I've had 5 minutes of, and it could just be whack on your favorite music, one track, and literally just move to it any which way you like. Um, but yeah, getting it done for me is getting it done in the first window of the day, and then I don't have the excuse of, yeah, the day just got swept up and went. So yeah.
For other clients that are listening, or people that are listening that, like Kate and myself, are not like in love with movement the way that you are, or haven't I'm going to say we haven't fallen in love with it yet, or we've fallen out of love with it. We loved it at one point. We love it less now. Are there other things you suggest? So for your clients, is it scheduling their workouts? Like, what do you suggest for people who maybe don't love movement?
Yeah, it's finding what works for you. So if you are a scheduler, is there a way that you can set an alarm on your phone? That's the classic one, to remind you to move if you need those reminders like that. Is there a way that you can sticky note around your laptop? I mean, if you are sedentary, you definitely need to be getting up every 30 minutes anyway, with some sort of just walking away and then coming back, bringing that regular movement in. But my biggest thing is finding the things that you love to do. So is there one movement that you love, that feels really good, that feels really nurturing, and could you almost set yourself a little movement goal over a time period, and start, for example, start small and start incrementally? So this week for 2 minutes I'm going to do whatever it might be, like a set of 10 squats. Like my thing the last 2 weeks is every day 20 squats, and I've just been doing 20 squats a day. Or it could be, doing some hip circles, or like choosing one movement element and almost like gamifying it. So every day I'm going to do cat cow, 5 of them, and then at the end of the week, go and take yourself off. Like I love kombucha, I go and get all the kombuchas, like treat myself to 5 different flavors kombuchas. Yeah, gamify it if that's your bag, if you're that kind of person that gets turned on by gamifying things.
Oh, I
But
love that.
yeah,
So like
yeah.
a goal, a small attainable goal. So back in the well-being days, we call this a micro step, right? So something that's too small to fail, a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, get yourself started, 30 seconds, whatever. And then tie it to a reward for yourself if you do it for a certain number of days, which is kombucha for you. We now know another nugget. Now I know how to get to your heart. I mean, I feel like I knew that anyway, like how to get to you, but now I've got another extra trick, like just send you like a case of kombucha or something like that. Wonderful. Okay. Great.
Love
Yeah. Great question, Kate. Thank you. We are almost at time and I want to be respectful. So please tell all the people where they can find you, where they can find more information about Free Your Spine, all of those wonderful things.
Sure. So you can go to the site, which is freeyourspinepilates.com, and there is some more juicy info there. I do play quite a lot in those Instagram streets, and the handle is at the Free Your Spine Method. And I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect with me there, Nicola Share Geismar. And you can reach out at any time. I'm happy to open conversation, answer any questions that might come in, and yeah, keep the connection going.
Amazing. Well, obviously we're going to share all of those notes with the community. We will also share them out when we share this recording more broadly. This was so enjoyable. I just adore you. And our meeting, see, this is why I love her. Do you see all the joy? Our meeting was such a synergistic, alchemistic, serendipitous, incredible meeting. And so grateful to have you in my life and part of the Fuchsia Tent. So y'all go and find Nicola. Go find the Free Your Spine Method. We now know how to find her. And I will see you all soon in the tent. Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.